Hello again and welcome back to the UK edition. The UK, of course, is now stepping further and further away from the EU. The Prime Minister has spoken. She has said that there will be no selective access to the EU single market. The EU was saying much the same thing anyhow. She has said that Britain will look for a good trade deal. What that deal will be, we do not know. Certainly the government does not know. But what does this mean for Britain? What does it mean for Indians in Britain, the largest minority in this country by far? Let's step across to the offices of Mr. Virendra Sharma, Member of Parliament for Ealing Southall, and have a word with him. Sharmaji, we've had a statement from Theresa May, the first, no doubt, of many visions and revisions to come on the EU policy. But the fundamental question is, could we, as she has been claiming, have a better trading agreement with the EU than as a part of the EU? Because the EU leaders have suggested not.
This is the whole confusion created by Brexit. First, nobody had the clue before the Brexit outcome came that in case the public decide to get out of EU, what will be the program, what are the plans for the future. This is the failure of those people on both sides, that where the Remain also failed, that they had no plans for either way. Now 26 on one side and Britain on one side, they expect to get the maximum out of it.
Will they?
They will not get the maximum. Not the gut feelings, whatever understanding I have of the system, how it works, if they give a favourable treatment to Britain, or there is some flexibility, there will be quite a few other countries who will use that route as well.
So in order to keep the EU together, they can't give Britain a better deal than before.
That's the common sense. And if you still demand that you can have a better deal for the British people, this is a total nonsense.
There has been some suggestion that Britain will buy access to the single market, not buy so much as rent it, so to speak, that the UK will pay a fee to the EU, the taxpayer will pay, so that you will have trading terms as before without free movement of people. Is this likely?
Whether it will happen or not is a wait and see situation. This is one option put forward. But my point is still the same. Why they have to accept to have a trade with Britain when the Britain has betrayed the trust and the contract they have made many years ago.
So you don't think it's a workable option?
I don't think that it can even happen. If it happens, then we will see many more other countries in Europe will come and demand the same deal what Britain have.
So what are the options now for Britain?
I still believe that the British Parliament should reject the referendum outcome because it was advisory, not mandatory. There are the backgrounds in the past where the Britain and others has refused to accept the outcome.
What is your party's position here?
It's not party, it's individuals. There's no...
Is there a party position at all?
There's a, that we should negotiate the better deal for Britain.
But that is saying nothing.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. My personal view as a member of Parliament is that we should take this risk, I'm very cautiously using the term, that if we, rather than going through all these difficult periods, we also saw it's a very close margin, it's not huge margin. It was advisory, it is written advisory. Parliament still have this option to say that rather than going through all these difficulties, which is not beneficiary to Britain or anybody else in Europe, it's better we reject that and face the consequences when 2020 elections come.
Is there sufficient support for this position within your party?
I'm raising that. I'm sure there's other MPs who are thinking on those lines, but it's a political courage. Parliament is not only what the rest of the country believes. You as an elected representative also have a responsibility to see what is better for the future. When we are discussing it on a daily basis that this referendum was not the right, there was not enough information given, Brexit has lied to the country, the figures given were wrong. Once we believe that, and we then still as a member of parliament voting for that lies, then we are failing our responsibility.
But we are really speaking of a conflict between two kinds of democracy here, a people's democracy and a parliamentary democracy.
I think that the parliamentary democracies as it is seen in the past is far beyond the public democracy. If we are coming back every time, then where is the rights and the responsibilities of elected members? Elected members have to take the decisions what is better for the country. In this case, I believe my constituents in my constituency also believe that remaining in Europe is beneficiary for the long term. This is the short term result. We should not accept it.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has taken a position, and whatever they decide, they have said that they will not negate the referendum. So the referendum result stands so far as the Supreme Court considers it to be valid. So if the Supreme Court says so, it stands.
Yeah, I accept it, but then still, it is the parliamentarians' responsibility, which way they want it to go. If they believe it, my question comes, if the parliamentarians, elected members believes it, that the referendum outcome of Brexit is causing huge difficulties on every aspect, trade, employment opportunity, movement of people, then we should take that risk.
But is there acknowledgement of this problem? There seems to be a denial. There is all this bravado being floated around that yes, we will have a better deal. It's all very vague, but you hear a lot of people saying these vague things, people in high position.
I said it right in the beginning, that nobody is aware what is on the other side of the fence. This is just the hope.
The other side of the fence is not very far, and still they are not aware.
They're still not aware. I mean, Europe has collectively said that they will not do any favourable deal with Britain. So I do not see.
Their trading commissioner has said so.
Yeah, our ambassador has resigned on those lines. But on top of that, if you see the movements in the last few months since Theresa May became a Prime Minister of the country, whenever she visited Europe, the reception she received, the hostility she had suffered, the way they have treated her over there is an indication that those people are not happy with the outcome of Brexit, which they feel that Britain has betrayed. I'm a member of the Council of Europe. Whenever you go to Europe and you talk to the members, they feel it. They feel very strongly that Britain has betrayed.
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. He saw this as a verdict that he personally could not support or implement. So as the honorable thing to do, he left it to somebody else to do. There are ways of looking at it. But meanwhile, we've had a view on this from the other side of the sea, the longer stretch from across the Atlantic. We've heard from Mr. Trump via Mr. Gove, and he says this is wonderful. Why does he say so?
I mean, everybody, wherever they are, they're looking at from their own sides of it. They don't look at what Britain's needs are, what Britain can offer, and what Britain is dependent upon. They don't see that. They only see from their own perspective.
But they are talking of, he has suggested a very good, promising trade deal between the US and UK. What the stuff of that will be, we haven't heard. But do you think there could be such an advantageous deal with the US that it will more than compensate loss with the EU?
It's again wait and see situation. Whether
We
Trump
wait and see, but
deliver.
what do you think? Do you think it's possible?
I don't believe what Trump is saying is right. He will stick to it when he takes over. What will be the advice given to him? What will be his foreign policy after that? How he is going to react to Europe and Britain? Is he going to ignore the rest of Europe in favor of Britain? These are the questions we will see soon after he is actually taken control of the country. At present, it's a vague. He's saying something today about Russia, tomorrow he changes. The very minute he is changing his statements, and I don't believe that Trump, as a president of the country, will deliver what he says. We have to wait and see. As I'm saying that in my view, in politics it never happens what you think will happen. So we have to wait and see. You only make judgments what is written on the wall at present or today.
Could Trump's support for Brexit turn out to be the kiss of death? He doesn't quite enjoy much credibility, doesn't enjoy a great deal of respect. So could it turn out that his support for Brexit will actually be more damaging than supportive?
Anybody he supports, Trump, any statements he gives are always contradictory. Nobody can believe them. And anybody associating with Trump on all walks of life, issues, human rights, immigration, general economy, then I think that they can see written on the wall, that's the end of that day.
Well, we'll see how that Trump card plays out, but a very quick break now and back with Mr. Sharma very soon, and then we'll talk about what Brexit means or doesn't for Britain's relations with India. Welcome back. Now, we heard a great deal through this Brexit campaign that Britain will, turn its back at least partially on the EU. There will be more trade with the US, more with India. India is the biggest country of the Commonwealth. We haven't heard follow-up policies in line with those promises. Sharma ji, so India replacing the EU never was likely, is it?
I doubt it. Though there are some analysts believe it, but if you look at Theresa May's visit to India a few weeks ago, and if you see the outcome of that,
Disaster.
It indicates that the future between Britain and India is not as rosy as people expect or the diaspora expects.
When you say not as rosy, is this British understatement? Because that visit was shambolic. Yeah. The big question was immigration, and she said this almost before she stepped into India, that no, we will stick with this. We will in fact tighten rules. That was not a very smartly timed statement for one thing.
That's where I feel that the Prime Minister, Theresa May, on the foreign policy, her approach in general on diplomatic way is very poor. She may be a good member of parliament, but I don't think that she will be proved a successful prime minister. Example, India's visit is classic. If you look at, I was in India that time.
Yes, you were. What was wrong?
I was in India, and the people questioned her. Even the Prime Minister of India has raised the questions about their relationship between Britain and India. Trade relationship, not social.
Which has not been rising. India's trade with almost the whole world has been rising, but not with Britain.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that it is the failure of the present government of taking those issues forward, working closely with the diaspora people. I make an emphasis here. Diaspora is a major role to play in the relationship between India and Britain. She is not taking them seriously, and that is where when Indian Prime Minister has raised the question on immigration, students' issues, future relationship, how flexible they will be, what is for the benefit of India rather than benefit of Britain, that mutual understanding and the support to each other. She never came out very positively on that.
You know, you were there when Theresa May was visiting. Two things happened. One is that in the middle of that very quick visit, India ordered demonetization. That was perhaps some indication that India is thinking of domestic policies. They didn't think that it's worth waiting a day to delay that decision. It perhaps was some indication of the lack of importance of that visit. But however you may interpret it, that or not, what was the kind of reception he had? She had the popular reception. How did the media respond to that visit?
I can say very honestly that there was very little mention, maybe half a day people talk about it. Rest of the time she was there, whether she was in Bangalore, whether she was in Delhi, there was very little writings done through the media or on the print and the TV channels. There was no reception, proper reception, which is highlighted as such an important visit of the Prime Minister of UK, which we have seen in the past, that the way the British Prime Ministers were received by the Prime Ministers of India and the Government of India, this was not seen to be there.
She was almost ignored, but would you see that as a sign, among others, that India is not that excited about Britain standing alone outside the EU?
No, India is doing their own trade. They wanted to have long-term relationships with the world, not with one country. And I always said it, and I repeat that India is not going to ignore Europe against Britain. It's us in Britain need to work out a strategy where we can have more open relationship, equal relationships with India, where Indian people also benefit along with the British. At present, the approach from the British Prime Minister and the British government is that they are the superior, the rest of the world is inferior.
They still think that. In fact, they seem to think that more than before.
I mean, Brexit outcome is one, because the people were lied, they were given the false information.
£350 million a week going to will go to NHS from the EU.
No,
what was all this about?
That, they were also saying that when there was no membership of EU, we control the world. Why can't we control the world now? The time has gone.
Isn't that worrying?
Yeah, it is very worrying. It's the most reactionary, not 21st century approach. It's the approach of the 16th century, where some people still living in and some politicians misleading. Yeah, I don't think that all those people on Brexit believes that. Some of them, which was enough to bring
enough
that
to
outcome.
swing that vote, yes, yes.
So, but I feel it very strongly.
One of the issues that was raised through the campaign, and it was raised by supposedly learned and well-informed people, is that the free trade agreement between India and the EU has not happened. Britain will now be in a position to negotiate directly with India. But there are two questions here. One, the clauses that the EU opposed, UK also opposed as part of the EU. If there were disadvantages to the EU, the same disadvantages would come to the UK in that bargaining position. Second, if there is a deal, what is of India's interest? The EU is 400, 500 million. The UK will be 40 million, take away Scotland, even less. So with such a small market, a free trade agreement, even if it could be negotiated, would it be of great importance to India?
Mr. If we look at the whole past few years history of Europe, which Britain has played its own part, never raised the voice in favor of India when Europe was not working in favor of India. So they never raised. So there is no record of his support in the past. Secondly, now it's Indians and the Indian government will be looking at what is beneficiary from them. not Britain looking at what beneficiary for Britain, but is there any mutual understanding? As you yourself said, where's the 500 million market on one side and 40 million market on other side, which way the Indian traders, Indian businesses, Indian government look at? Larger market or small market?
Even within that, you say, and you've been watching this space very, very closely, particularly relations with India, that when the EU has taken a hostile position to India, the UK has not been speaking up for India within the UK.
Yes,
within the EU, that is.
Yes, that's it, where they never voted against, but they actually endorsed the EU decisions, whether it was the political or bureaucratic. Britain never spoken out in favor of India. That what is the question mark. Now, why they should be speaking, and why, once India has negotiated any trade deals with 500 million people, are they going to drop those agreements and come in aid of Britain? I believe, and I certainly very strongly advocate, Britain has to come down to the level where they are the equal partners on equal footing, talking to the other nations, which includes India, for the future development, economic and social development. And I once again say that diaspora to take into confidence, which is diaspora is the main bridge between
Well, we
India and
often said that, Sharma ji, that diaspora is the bridge. It's a bit of a slogan, but when has it ever really been the bridge between India and the UK?
That's where I think the both governments are failing. They don't see it, the importance
Your
of
Labour
that.
government failed too.
I said that all the governments failing. I never said the Labour government has done better than that. And I think that that's where Britain is losing. India is not losing. India is developing. Britain was developed. Now depends upon the rest of the world. If they don't get better deals for the betterment of Britain and British people, they will be the losers, not India or anybody else.
Well, with India there is a big problem, but of course the far bigger problem is with the EU. Coming back to where we began, Sharma ji, if Parliament cannot negate the referendum, and it doesn't look like it can, what are Britain's options?
Britain's options are to negotiate with Europe, accept what is offered. I don't think that they are in a better position to negotiate. It's the terms of reference will be given by Europe unless the whole thinking change. In today's terms, is that Europe will put the terms of reference before, which Britain has to accept. I don't think that Britain is in a better position to negotiate.
Well, the negotiations are only just about beginning. Do you think 2 years on, when the divorce actually happens, Britain will be in the position of prosperity it believes it would be in?
It's a time will tell. I think that we are not in a strong position. It's very difficult to predict what will happen in 2 years. If it happens, the negotiations, tough negotiations taking place will resolve it. But I hope that some good negotiations comes up which are beneficiary to both to Europe as well as to Britain. And I hope that human transportation on the basis of movement is safe, trade is safe, jobs are safe for not only Britain, everybody living in the global market.
Well, the vote was against all of these things, and we wish, Sharma ji, you had painted a less gloomy scenario, but thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
So the big overhanging question now is what Parliament can or will do. We'll watch that space very closely here together on News 18.